At its simplest, Evolve is a hardcore game of hide and go seek. And for anyone who's ever played that game in the real world, where you play it makes all the difference in how fun it is. The levels in Evolve have to account for hiding, tracking, and fighting your prey, as well as dealing with the various ways that creature or hunter can traverse the environment. And all of it has to be wrapped up in an alien world that proves to be as dangerous as anything else in the game. Obviously, a lot of attention has to be considered to like how a map works and how it sort of maintains the fun. But when you have varying traversal methods, be it monster or the jetpacks of the hunters, and the fact that there's really two stages of the game, one which is more like a hide and go seek, you're trying to stay away from each other, and one which is sort of combat. I mean, how did you have to rethink approaching level design?
We didn't know what would work and what would be fun, so we really were starting at zero. We have a number of level designers, and we really didn't want to sort of set any guidelines for like how big should the map be, or how wide, or what the flow should be. We just really wanted to not put rules on anybody and just let everybody kind of explore. There was a bunch of maps that we tried that won't ship with the game, but we learned from those.
The first map that we did was enormous. It was like a little over half a kilometer. And we found very quickly that if a map's too big, they never find each other. And if a map's too small, they can't get away from each other, right? So there's this sort of fine balance, that it really can only be figured out through playing the map over and over and over again, how big a map needs to be.
And then obviously the aesthetics of it have to then work within this sort of fantastic world. Say, a more traditional shooter, you're using kind of real world locations, but here you had to kind of make it work in a far more wild place.
Just speaking of, the art side, because it's an alien planet, right? You don't really expect it to look just like Earth. So initially we made all of our trees really weird, that looked pretty much nothing like you'd ever see on Earth. And the odd thing that we found was that it made you uncomfortable to be there. Like, we would have people say, is that gonna attack me? They weren't sure what the rules were. And so, then that's where we started pushing it back towards a more Earth-like environment, right? Because that's comfortable, right? People immediately understand that, hey, I'm in a forest, and there are a certain set of rules that you apply to a forest. It's not really like any forest on Earth, but it's close, so I get it.
Another aspect sort of movement, once you do start engaging with the other side, that doesn't mean you want to do that in perpetuity for the rest of the match, that there is a desire to want to escape.
Yeah, a forest environment was the first environment we built. We had these tall trees, but trees don't break your line of sight down low where the player's eye is. So we had to start making these really large bushes. And that worked, and we started building maps that way, and we said, okay, we figured it out. And then we went to go build desert. Desert doesn't have a lot of trees and bushes. And yes, we can use rocks, but you can only use so many rocks before the map starts to look weird. So the other thing was altitude changes. We can have some small maps as long as there are different levels. I can be 10 feet from the monster, but he could be on a ledge that's 20 feet above me and I don't notice him. And the terrain, there's never a flat spot in the terrain. And that just caused all kinds of problems. Anything from animations from a four-legged animal on uneven terrain. Now you're looking at IK systems to snap the feet to the uneven terrain, or you're looking at does he tilt when he goes up and down. And then our monsters climb. They can climb almost anything, right? So the climbing has to be able to handle an organic surface. It's like one thing on the art side to want these really natural looking organic environments, and then on the tech side, you've actually got to go back and make all that stuff work.
In terms of locations, you have sort of desert locations, you have swampy locations, you have some that actually have two different weather patterns that are going on simultaneously. It's kind of like it helps inform the fiction of the world. Did you guys talk a bit about the whys of the location and how it fit into the overall, narrative?
We really wanted the world to have that feeling of kind of isolation. So immediately that's like, okay, well, it's a colony planet. That's why it's relatively unpopulated, because you're on the farthest reaches of civilized space. And so immediately you have that feeling of like, there's no way off this planet. The other thing is like, we've always really liked Westerns. So why not, inject a little bit of that flavor? And I think as you run around the world, you see little bits of that Old West architecture that kind of harkens back to those days.
In addition, monsters and hunters on this map, there is the flora and fauna. There's a lot of creatures, some which are completely harmless to a hunter, some which are incredibly harmful. I mean, the tyrant is the one where, if I saw water on a handful of maps, I'm not even going down there.
Well, there's certainly, for the monster, we wanted there to be this element of risk-reward for when he's eating, right? So, the bigger, the more dangerous a creature is, the more meat.
The faster he gets to evolution.
Right, exactly, yeah. The more sustenance he gets from that. So there's this whole strategizing. Do I want to stay safe and just eat the little creatures that aren't going to hit me, or, do I want to stage up quicker?
The wildlife creates opportunities for both teams. We saw a monster win a game because 3 hunters, 2 of them stepped in plants and 1 got hit by a megamouth all at the same time. So the whole team got taken out by the environment.
From where you started with the game and those initial levels, have you guys learned more about the vagaries and the nuances of level design because you've been trying to do something that pretty much hasn't been done before?
Yeah, I think so. We're still learning more, and we expect to learn more once we get more players in there. We study heat maps and all the places where people fight and where people killed and how do they move through the maps. And so we feel like we've learned a lot, but we still feel like there's a lot more to come. Like there's a lot more to learn. We know that we can make even cooler stuff in the future, so we're just going to keep pushing.
The signature element of Evolve is the monster. What did you know, though, going in, what you had to do, A, to have an exciting monster, and one that would be competitive inside of the game environment?
From a visual standpoint, I think the initial goal was to come up with monsters that you'd never seen before, right? And so what we ended up with were some monsters that, as works of art, were really cool, but you would look at them and you didn't know what the hell you were looking at. You want to be attached to your character. The monsters are no different. Certainly when I'm playing as the monster, I feel like I'm the good guy and they're the bad guys, and of course, vice versa.